Live. Hey everyone, Jamal here from Review Me and Paper Cut Magazine, and this is another session of Shoot the Shit. And I'm here with the awesome fashion photographer, Diggy Lloyd. Say what's up, Diggy.
Hey.
I can see you. And for those of you who are not familiar with Diggy, she's based in New York, attended Parsons School of Design, has had the pleasure of assisting both Annie Leibovitz and Mary Ellen Mark, which is amazing. We'll have to talk about that, of course. Sure. And you've also had your work, exhibited at galleries in Mexico and Chicago and Russia, and so we'll get into all that. And obviously, you also have your work has been published in Teen Vogue and Paper, and you've worked with Sony and Warner Brothers, so we can kind of get into some of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I guess a little flip around here. What made you want to jump into photography? What do you love so much about photography?
Oh, wait, that's a good question. I still think that there's, no matter how many pictures I take, there's always something that's so incredibly magical about light and how it is always changing every second of the day, and just capturing that and seeing that it's still magic to me. It's pretty crazy. I don't think I'll ever get sick of it, but just seeing that transition, that it translate, is pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
What made you decide to go to Parsons? Obviously, that's one of the top photography schools, so the fact that you got in is pretty amazing. But what made you want to even decide to study it as opposed to just say, I'm going to do this on my own and just go in?
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't really have any other options at that point. So I was really blessed in high school. I had a great photography teacher. Her name is Carol Lichty-Smith. She's an incredible woman, and she started a program that was called Focus in high school that was joint with a bunch of other different high schools. So we would all get together a couple weekends a year, and we would all have a professional photographer would come and lecture, and then we would do shooting adventures, workshops, and then we would all put a show together. And we were hosting one weekend, and I just got so involved in photography. We had a dark room. I was there all the time, just printing before school, after school. And one weekend we had Mary Ellen Mark was the artist that was coming to speak to us. So I was just blown away when I met her. I'd never met anybody like her before. And I just was like, I have to know everything about her. I want to work for her. I want to do everything. So she was really supportive and kind of took me under her wing when I was, must have been 14 at that point. So she invited me to come to New York with her during my summers in high school. So I started interning for her pretty young, and then kind of fell in love with New York and her studio and everything that the city had to offer. So I was like, what's my next step? And it just kind of made sense to apply to Parsons, where I could really kind of polish this craft and see if I could make anything of it.
Cool.
So she was kind of a little hesitant about jumping to Parsons. She was like, if I was you, I wouldn't do it.
Interesting.
I have to say that was the one advice of hers I didn't take. A lot of it I did take, but that was one thing where I was like, well, my grades are pretty bad, so I don't really have anything else to do. So
You're like, well, I'm failing in life, but in photography, I have an A, so I'm going to try that.
Not at algebra, so this is my only other option right now.
So that's an interesting kind of transition show. We'll get into that next piece, but so you were basically kind of studying under, her, this legend in her own right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then learning that skill, but you still felt like you had more to do. You didn't want to just not go to school and
well, I didn't know anything else. I was either, New York is a really intimidating place, and just to move here at 18 without, an education, aside, not a second education or, it kind of scared me. So that was the, and it is such a great school and wonderful program. And I visited several times and took tours, and, just seeing the dark room, and, it's like, okay, sign me up, yeah. So that's when it all kind of started.
Cool. And then did you kind of stay in touch with her, or did you?
I went, every So once I started school, I still interned for her 1 or 2 days a week. And then her husband's also an incredible filmmaker. His name is Martin Bell. So I assisted him on some film shoots and stuff that he would do around New York and in New Jersey and places like that. And then whenever I had to register for classes, I'd always take the professor list to Mary Ellen and be like, who do you think I should take? Can you recommend somebody? And, so she was kind of the overseeing presence of everything, while I still definitely had, more mentors at school and some incredible teachers that really pointed me in the right direction and gave me some incredible feedback about my work. So overall it was also an interesting program because at that time, the program's now changed a lot, but it was a direct entry. So you had to declare your major before you started class. So going in, I was like, okay, I'm a photographer and I'm about to spend a boatload of money on this education. And if it doesn't work, then I have to kind of start back at square one. So typically most art schools have a foundation year where you can do, 2D design or typography or, be a designer or kind of get introduced to everything. So with then like photography that's what you were doing. So you just jump right in and start in the darkroom the first day, and it was pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
You feel like that kind of helped you to basically, it seemed like you just immersed yourself in every facet, whether it be learning from somebody in the real world, learning, like you were just immerse yourself. Is that kind of your learning style? Because it feels like some people are like, I don't want to learn from anybody. I'm just going to experiment until I get it. And then there are those who go to school and need mentorship. And, I guess what the two differences you've seen are that people and why did that work for you, the whole like learning from somebody?
That's a good question. I think that there's a lot of different attitudes that you can take towards it, but I think that I was just always kind of naive about the subject and just so incredibly passionate about it that I just wanted to learn everything I could. And, my mom always said that, she was a classical ballerina for a very long time. And she was like, if this is something that you want to do, you need to study every single thing about it and learn it from, like a budget point of view to a art point of view to, all the different facets, because it is such an incredible art form where if you do decide to go the photography education route, there's so many things that you can learn in terms of if you want to be an agent, if you want to be a photographer, if you want to be a studio manager, if you want to be all these things, you can definitely do that and perfect that and kind of leave with incredible connections. The professors there are awesome and really can help you out with, it's how I was introduced to Annie and more internships and clients and shows and all that stuff. So it's a great network in that case too. So that's kind of how I saw it, and just that's how I went with it. I didn't really think about, I couldn't really think about anything else at that point. So I just tried to do everything that I could.
Nice. And you brought up Annie, so I think one of our questions here mentions that. One at the top. It says, what were some of the most important things you learned from her with regard to your lighting subjects? Would love to hear more about your lighting education and what Annie taught you that you benefited from.
Yeah, so that's actually a good question, and those two things are really intertwined. So there was sophomore year of Parsons, there is a studio and light class that you have to take. So my professor for that, his name is Alex. He's also an incredible photographer, Alexander Berg. So he was my teacher, and I meant to Google this before I started, but he made us shoot the type of Polaroid film that we had to set up strobes. We had to shoot with a 4x5 camera, and we had to shoot, I think it was type 45 or type 55, the Polaroid that was also a negative and a Polaroid at the same time. So you couldn't like fudge any assignment. So you had to really understand all of the ratios and all of the different layers of lighting and reciprocity and all of those things that make up a great studio portrait. So having that and learning that, and I was just so interested in it, and I loved the film, and I thought it was just like the most beautiful thing I've ever worked with. So he was actually out of town, so he had someone come in and substitute the class who happened to be Annie's first assistant. So he was lighting and showing us some stuff, and he had asked me if I was looking for an internship, and I said sure. So he hooked me up with the studio manager at Annie's. So I was in the studio with her for about 2 years, a couple of days a week, and there was sort of like different levels that you started off first in archiving, and then you sort of started doing photo research. She does an incredible amount of research just for a single portrait. No matter who the subject is, I have to prepare big press packs kind of about the person, about, every song they've made, if they're a movie star, what movies they've been in, what clips they, I like or think are important. And then she would have an idea. So it would be, okay, I'm shooting a person, walking down the beach. Or for like one particular example, it was Daniel Radcliffe was laying on top of a horse for with like that portrait. So I had to find every single picture of any human ever with a horse. So then you end up with like stacks of photos that are like this tall of, everything from stock images to her library, which is huge. So it's just a lot of scanning, and then she sort of compiles everything and really sketches out the portrait if it's something that's very workshopped like that. So even on set, I would just be like holding the research pack. So if anyone ever had a question or wanted to try something else or anything like that, there was never a shortage of ideas because it was, really planned out. Where before was under Mary Ellen for so long in school, I didn't know what really fashion photography was or how to make a portrait, any of those things, because I was always, I went down to Mexico with Mary Ellen and just, she's very much on the street, on the fly, nothing kind of really planned out. She doesn't really believe in pre-visualization and all that stuff. So it was definitely to see both sides of the spectrum and really very different sides was really beneficial to kind of develop my own practice and how I'm going to handle when I'm in that situation. So so in terms of lighting and technical ability, I really learned that a lot in school with ratios and all of the really boring stuff, but the fun stuff and how to apply it is really what I learned from Annie and just the immense amount of research that goes into a project.
Nice. Yeah. Let's talk more about that. That is very well. I think there's two things there that really stand out to me. One is the two different styles. And I think that, as a photographer or any creative, really, who you learn from is incredibly important. So there's like, if you want to go in a particular direction, then you have to seek out who you want to learn from because they're different styles. But for someone like you who is just trying to immerse themselves, it does really seem like getting both sides is great, and then being able to kind of pick and choose. So, sorry, go ahead if you had a point there.
And I think it's important to understand both sides of those because there's so many, different kinds of things that I like to do, whether it be a very stage still life type of thing, which does require a lot of research and planning, and everything needs to be very strategic. But then there's also a side of me that loves to just walk around the streets with my point and shoot camera, or take out a medium format and kind of just roam around until you find something. And I think that you don't necessarily have to be one way or the other, but you definitely have to find a platform in which those places live together.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that seems like just that seems like, first off, it's really, really impressive. I think a lot of people think Annie just shows up and just, but turns out, no, you're in the back room researching every single thing possible so that when she does take that photo, she knows exactly what she's going to do. She's like, book and packs. That's incredible. We'll have to see what one of those looks like if you could ever get your hands on those to show.
Yeah. And so, now that am shooting professionally and in, not that I've been in a situation like that. And then, in terms of when you only have like 30 seconds with a subject, you really have to know how to get there and make that connection really quick and kind of get that image that you want. And I think that comes from
yeah. So really, the preparation comes in play when it's all about that commercial aspect where time is money. And if you can, and yeah, I mean, you do see that with Annie. She'll show up and take one shot sometimes, and she's like, "I'm done." And you're like, "Wait, what?
Oh, yeah.
How'd you, like, wait a minute."
Yeah.
It's like, how'd you do that? Yeah. But now we know how she did it. She's super freaking prepared.
Out of pre-production.
Yeah, talent obviously is key, and the technical ability, but preparation is immensely important. Is what I'm seeing. So let's talk about the other side of that, which is like the Mary Ellen side, which is like, so she would just kind of walk around and just feel the moment.
So she also had a really successful commercial practice as well. She would, but she was always so interesting about the way that she would do commercial things, because even if it was a portrait or New York Magazine or People or something like that, she would get, they're one of the rarest cameras in the world, and, do this incredible, elaborate lighting process with 20 to go. And, so she's definitely very planned out like that as well. Where her preparation was more of like diagrams and understanding the previous shoots and stuff like that. So she still had a practice too, but she would, in workshops, if it was a street photography seminar type of thing, she would just do real work, and with her you would shoot. Like when I was down with her in Mexico, we would shoot up to 15 rolls a day, and every contact sheet, and she would just edit them for you. And to see that woman edit, 15 rolls of film, just of my film a day, to then see her edit the same for everybody else, it's like you have to sharpen your eye in editing in the same way shooting, and it's pretty incredible to watch her. Well, when I to watch it was pretty cool.
Yeah, wow, 15 rolls of film, that's crazy. Speaking of film, you obviously shoot and film a lot. What's your kind of percentages? Is it film more for personal, and obviously digital for commercial? And I guess talk about that.
If I can convince a client to shoot film, I absolutely will, but typically just the turnaround time doesn't allow for it. Sometimes editorially, I will shoot both, and if I have a couple of days where I can get that film process, I'll submit both. But if it's personal stuff, I try to shoot film because I think that it's slows me down a little bit more and makes me think about things differently, because typically commercial is happening so fast and so much about just getting as much content as possible. Sometimes it's just slow down and kind of take your time. So I'd say, probably 50.
That's pretty good. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, well, I try to, like, all my negotiations that was on film, and then mostly commercial stuff is, digital, but.
Yeah, it makes sense. Let's get into another member question here.
Yeah.
Let's see. Since you kind of mentioned commercial, I guess we'll jump on that wagon. So the question is, how does a photographer get a foot in the door with a major record label like Warner Brothers? Do you primarily interact with A&R department, or the art department, marketing? Kind of what was your route?
So that's really where an agent comes in hand, because I think there's, no matter how much groundwork and legwork I do in terms of getting my portfolio delivered to the adding, whether it's label, whether it's anything, a lot of the people are too busy to look at it, and they need somebody to get it in front of the right people. So I think that's definitely where an agent really comes in handy and push it in front of them are going to make the call to give you a job. Okay. So, yeah.
Makes sense. And so kind of speaking of agents, when did you first land your agent? So you graduated and then, did you do some work or did you go right to getting an agent because you had all these connections? Like, how'd that work for you?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's kind of a long answer. So I'll try to make it as short as possible. So after I graduated, I started just taking every job. I'm hearing a little bit of a delay. Did you guys hear that, or is that just me?
I think you're good now. If you want to stay at that, right? Yeah, maybe that's that.
Oh, okay.
Slide your chair forward, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. So, is that better?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay. Right. So after college, I just started shooting and. Can you hear that, or is that just me?
You're good now. It's weird. I think maybe the energy in your voice is so strong, and I don't
know. Yeah, so I started just sort of taking every single job that I could, whether it be a nightlife shoot, a party shoot, touring. I went on tour for a long time with bands and clothing companies, and just not thinking about the end result of my portfolio and just trying to shoot and do as much stuff as I could. And then I kind of ran out of money, I guess. So I was like, okay, I either have to, now it's time to get a job, or, I wasn't making as much money as I thought I would, just doing random job or all the shoots. So I started applying to full-time jobs, and one of the positions was a junior agent at a photo agency at Beauty and Photo. So I applied to be my agent's assistant, and I was like, okay, this will be great. I'll do this for, a year, couple years, then I'll show her some pictures and say, this is, I'd love your opinion on my work, blah, blah, blah. So as I went in for the interview, we instantly had a great connection. We talked about Mary Ellen and Annie, and, she had all worked with them at previous agencies in the past. So I also started working a lot with Paper Magazine, doing editorial content for them. So I used one of the editors there as a reference. And so she had called him to say, like, oh, I'm thinking about hiring Diggy, blah, blah, blah. He's always been extremely supportive of my work. So he was, said some very nice things. So she later that day called me and was like, I think that, you at the end of the day are a photographer, and I would like to work with you and representing you and building your portfolio and getting all the stuff that one needs to do to, be a professional. So she said, come back, the next day and bring me every one of your favorite pictures you've ever taken. So I go back home and I make a 4x100, like 1,000 4x6 prints of everything that I liked. And then I went back the next day, left it on her desk, and she was like, okay, we have to work on editing and understanding what stylistically is going on, what these common threads are in my work and all of that stuff. So I think that I never saw myself as a commercial photographer or fashion or portrait or anything like that. And I think that once starting to work with her was really when that sort of clicked for me of like, oh, okay, I see how this, could be marketable for that, or how this kind of ties into that brand or whatever. So there was a lot of preparation in terms of getting my portfolio together and things like that. And then also, what brands do I see myself working for, and, who are my dream clients, who are things like that. So it's kind of understanding the picture that you want to paint, sort of, and just kind of doing that legwork. And then you start taking meetings, and then, hopefully the, jobs come after that. So, people also, clients want to meet you and see you and, not know the kind of person that you are and what you're going to deliver and all those certain things. So, I mean, the first year was just like getting everything together and meeting with people and meeting with magazines and, you know, things like that. And that still is a very big part of the job as well. So, yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, I'm going to put up on an hour. That'd be too much delay, hopefully.
Okay.
So that is so cool. So you went to be her assistant.
Yeah, so I was like riding my bike and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. This is like so cool. So yeah, I was a little disappointed because I thought when I walked in there, I was like, I totally got this job. She like really likes me. And then it kind of turned out to be different and, you know, something better than I could have expected. So.
Yeah, but well, you went to school to be a photographer, so
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy. You almost went this way. Luckily,
yeah, exactly.
And you know, I think that's also a good piece of advice. That you hear this more so in the kind of venture capital world, but you know, if you ask somebody for money, you'll get advice. If you ask for advice, you'll get money. And so in that case, you were just saying, "Hey, I just want to get your thoughts," and that turns out being your photographer. So that's kind of cool.
And I was also just like so eager for a job at that point. I was like, I don't want her to think I'm coming in here with ulterior motives, to be like, oh, I'm a photographer and, you know, all of this kind of stuff. I was like, I will literally take anything I can get right now. So I think I just like having that openness really worked to my benefit for sure.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Getting weird.
When that was. So let's get into another question. Let's see. Here we go. Let's try to switch gears. So let's talk about art.
Okay.
Question is, when was the first time you exhibited your photography in a gallery? Was it challenging to convince a curator to exhibit your work? And I guess how did that whole thing start?
I think I just kind of sidestepped all of that. So I just kind of became my own gallerist and curator. So I think that it's really important because I think that the gallery scene in the art world makes a lot of assumptions about what should be seen and how it should be seen. And I think that, there's something definitely to be said for that. And I think some of the things that come out of that are really incredible. But I think when it comes to me on a personal level, it's not necessarily about, I'm not doing this in terms of, trying to make a lot of money or get exposure or, doing anything like that. It's more about like, these are pictures that I so strongly believe in and I want them to be seen. And I will try to get that to happen in any way, shape or form. So I think it's just a lot of times like finding the right space to where these pictures are going to live in and what kind of that whole event is going to look like. So I think that if I spent time trying to convince a curator why they should show my work, I would still never be showing a picture, because I think that it's about getting it out as fast as you can and still feeling very comfortable with what you're showing, but then also just to like keep producing. And then once something sticks, it'll stick. But I don't think you can get stuck up in of like, oh, this is going to be like the most like groundbreaking gallery show in the world and, blah, blah, blah. So the first gallery show that I did was a bunch of nudes that I took of self-portraits of friends, of my mother, of my sister, of just like anybody. I mean, mostly women, but and I just thought that they were absolutely beautiful pictures and I wanted to show them. And does it fit with anything I do commercially? Absolutely not. But that wasn't important to me, and that I just wanted them to be seen. So I found some friends that had produced a show before, used their space, and then sort of kind of produced everything myself. So yeah, you can kind of, I think now in this day and age, you kind of have to do that for yourself because it's just such a saturated market.
Yeah. So really you just hustled and was like, well, A, I could talk to a curator. B, I'm gonna be the curator and I'm just going to put the, any space is an art space. So, Exactly. Whack it up is my theory.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, and I think I worked in an art gallery for a day, and I never went back because I was
for us.
like one day. I worked there for one day. And I just felt so bad because, you know, there's a receptionist sitting there. There's such this like glass wall that you can't access anything and that you can't touch anybody and you can never get a response. And I just was sitting doing archiving work, and, you know, there was probably 10 artists that came in that day that wanted to drop off their portfolio for the curator or the director to see or whatever. And it was just, everybody was so rude and mean, and it just really rubbed me the wrong way. So you know, that's, you know, very successful for a lot of, you know, Chelsea galleries, and that's definitely part of the shtick, but that wasn't something I was really interested in. So I think that, you know, if you have a good idea for a show and you want to show your work, then you can make it happen.
For sure. And,
yeah.
Let's actually talk about kind of some of your art stuff. So actually what I want to do is let's get a screen share going, and we will jump to your website.
Cool. So
let's make that bigger, and boom.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
I can.
Cool. So this is your website. Oh, okay. Now this is your website. Okay, really? Yeah. Now this is your website. Well, yeah. The whole thing was your website, really, but now we're looking at the homepage.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have kind of so you have like two sections for your commercial stuff, and then you have two sections for your personal stuff. So you do a lot of personal stuff, which I think is really great.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about 20-something. What's that? And I'll go through that.
Yeah. So this is a portrait project that I started maybe 2 years ago, and I just just kind of had an idea randomly one night where I was like, I would love to photograph everybody in the same manner, because that was very different from what I was doing with free association, which was just very off the cuff. So I was like, I want to challenge myself to take a portrait every single day of a new person in their 20s and ask everybody the same 5 questions. And I didn't necessarily there was questions in the questionnaire that was already printed out, and then I would schedule people to come into my studio and sit and answer the questions, and then we would take the picture. So I don't think that this is definitely not a completed project yet. It will be at some point, but I think it was just about the volume of how many people I could do, and the sincerity of each of the answers was really important to me, and kind of how the situation in which they were getting their picture taken and how that influenced their answer. Because I think that there's something that's really happening now with everything with social media and Facebook and all this stuff, is that people love to get their picture taken, but having this other question of like, oh, well, you also have to answer these questions for me before I can take your picture. And I was very adamant about doing the questions first, because that just kind of gets the person into a different place. So I kind of like this idea of them becoming their own journal entries, and just kind of photographing everybody in the same manner was really what it was about to me, or it still is about. So
you just said, okay, I'm just going to challenge myself to where I shoot somebody every single day. So like, how many people did you do like every day? Like how long? Like,
I mean, I probably have thousands of just a whole drive on my computer, just sitting there.
Wait.
I mean, one's like
thousands of people?
Yeah.
You've shot thousands of people.
I mean, it's probably about at 1,000 right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And I was like, well, I'm going to do, so it started out in my studio, and, you know, I have, so people would come, so it was just mostly word of mouth and like friends of friends that would kind of come and sign up, and I would email people, and then they would respond, and I'd set up either a meeting, you know, I just say drop by anytime because I was there. So it'll take 10 to 15, 20 minutes max. So people started coming in, and then it sort of translated. I wanted to see if I could create that same atmosphere outside of the studio. So I started, there's a music tech festival in Brooklyn that's called Northside Festival. Yep. So they had approached me about doing a collaboration with them. So I set up a booth on the side of the street, and it was basically it was so bootleg. I had a folding table out front with the questionnaires. I had some girlfriends come and help me. I set up a clothing rack, and then I put a white foam core so I would angle the clothing rack to where the light was to get like a good portrait. So I'd be like moving it around the street, and then would have people, you know, approach me on the street and say, hey, first question is, are you in your 20s? Second question is, do you want to be a part of my photo project? And then I would go into the, you know, minute spiel about what it was and why they'd want to do it. So I got a lot of people that way. So that was cool to see it translate into that street side. And then I also did the same thing with another festival down in Miami called 3 Points. So I went down there, and that was like a 3-day thing. So that was when I got, you know, probably like 500 people. I was doing like 100 people a day. And then it sort of, I've kind of like evened out a little bit because I'm like, wow, I have so much of this stuff right now, and I'm kind of still piecing it out and figuring out where it's going to live, what it's going to do, what it really means, all that stuff. So yeah, we'll see where that goes.
No, this is absolutely, it's so cool. Like, I think that, you know, the personal projects are just so important. And I love that you just challenged yourself. It didn't like come from some external force, just like, I'm going to do this. And I think that's definitely important.
Well, I think that that's also really important too in the commercial side of things, because it's like every single time I sit down, whether it's with a magazine or whether it's with a brand, always the first question is like, what are you working on? And it's always so awesome to just be like, oh, here's my new zine, or like, here's a new project. I just got back from Miami. This is what I've been doing. You know, stuff like that. Like, I love printed matter. I love having postcards and stickers and, you know, all that kind of stuff to just give to people and kind of show what you've been doing lately, because it is such a big, you know, you're only as good as the last picture that you took. So it's always, I think, important to keep working and pushing yourself and making new stuff.
For sure, for sure. I think that kind of answers one of the questions, which was, are you the type of photographer that shoots all the time? Since you specialize in fashion portraits, what subjects matter do you find yourself shooting when you don't have people around to photograph? And we already have the answer to this question. So what I'm going to do is pull up your Zine, which you just have random crap in that thing. Not crap, but you have so yeah, just kind of, you know, answer that question, and then we'll get into talking this Zine for your association.
Yeah. So very helpful advice that Mary Ellen always told me, that if you don't know what to shoot, shoot everything. And I think that that sounds very counterintuitive listening to it, but then once you actually do it, I think that there is just this magic about photography where you can sit and talk about this picture that you want to make for years and years and years. And then it's actually until you pick up your camera, does that picture change or come to life, or is something completely different? So I think I always have a camera on me, and I try not to shoot on my iPhone just because I will get so lazy if I only do that. And there's also something that's so beautiful about enlarging film and the grain and, you know, all of that stuff that I love so much. And there's so much with film things that can go wrong, which was what makes it to me so beautiful. Like, I have this picture, for example, I had 1600 speed film in, and that was shot at on a very sunny day at high noon, but I just love how weird and creepy it kind of looks. So things like that, like, I try not to think about all of the things that are going to make the picture wrong, and just do it. And then at the end of it, kind of free association to me just means kind of letting your subconscious piece these pictures together and whatever story that you want. So I'll print out all the 4x6s and then make pairings and then make a story, and then kind of lay it out and however I want to print it, and then kind of see what is made of it. So there's, you know, obviously a lot of themes. Like, the first one is definitely a lot about Americana and sort of the American dream and relationships, and your relationship to that, or my relationship to that. So I think that's hopefully comes through to somebody, but Yeah, so these are all pictures that I have taken in my free time that aren't really going to be applied to anything commercially, but I still love the pictures and think that they should be seen somehow. So this is kind of the what I settle on. And then it also still pushes me to, I love to let my film, for 6 months, not process anything and then take everything all at once. It also is like very therapeutic in a way of me figuring out what I've done the past 6 months with my life. So it's cool. I like to do that.
Yeah, I like that quote. I like this imagery. That's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, so pretty much you don't know what to shoot everything. And it looks like you have photos of beer cans, you have photos of cups on the ground, you have photos of landscapes. You just really go to town. I think that's a very important kind of theme and lesson. I think a lot of people are just like, what should I shoot? I don't know. Just like, just start shooting.
Yeah, and I think that this is a good way to kind of keep these particular pictures of random things all kind of living together in one body of work, which I really enjoy doing. So it's always fun to kind of see it all come together.
Yeah, I really like it's just cool that you're just constantly pushing yourself, constantly challenging yourself. But I also like that you're not only just taking these photos, you're trying to do something with them, whether it be setting up your own gallery show or coming up with a magazine and just, a little design and putting it together. So you're still trying to get your work out there. Obviously, you're curating it to the best photos you love, but I really love that you're not just sitting on stuff and you're pushing it out there and you're not waiting for somebody to like hold your hand. You're doing it yourself and hustling. I think that's important.
Yeah, and I think that's also what is so great about the time that we live in is that like we're able to do that. We're able to have so many platforms to reach people, whether it's Instagram or Tumblr or actual printed postcards, things like that. It's just it can go a long way if you're creative about it.
For sure. Anybody else have any further questions from the audience? Feel free to put them in the time slot. What am I talking about? In the chat window. So let's talk about some of the stuff you're currently working on. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Whichever. It's up to you.
Yeah. So kind of coming off the end of 2015, I haven't taken the time to sort of update everything. So since the beginning of the year, just completely redoing my website, which a lot of the platforms that exist today, like Squarespace and Wix and all those things, weren't around when I was building my original website. So it's cool to see all that stuff pop up. So kind of transferring everything over, redoing my website, redoing my blog.
What platform is your website currently on now?
I'm actually using Wix.
Oh, interesting. I actually like that template, actually. It's just pretty interesting. I mean, it depends on, on the one hand, it's probably harder to navigate because you have to scroll. But on the other hand, it's very beautifully presented and it has your feel. So I love that it's your branding. Yeah, it's cool to just flow through and it has a very magazine layout with the images come together. I've seen that template one or two other times, and every time it's very far and few between. Every 6 months, I'm like, wait, somebody has that template. Yeah, it's a really cool template. So that's cool. So you're kind of using.
It's not like a template because you start off with a specific template and then I just deleted everything and then added it as I wanted to. If that makes sense. So it's also a lot these platforms are amazing, but it's also a lot about how you trick that platform to get what you want out of it.
It's all about hacking it for sure.
Yeah. So this isn't a straight template. I did adjust the code a little bit and tricked it in terms of what the strips were and what the actual layout was.
Yeah, I just mean the parallax effect, as they call it, where it's and that effect. You don't see that too often. Usually it's maybe a straight scroll or straight scroll both ways. So the fact that overlapping, it just gives it a little bit more dynamic, which is cool.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, you're saying.
Yeah. Which is also the really fun part too, because you're whoa, you could just get lost in doing it for a month. You know what I mean? I'm just whoa, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's mostly what I've been working on, just kind of general housekeeping, and also I have a couple commercial portfolios, so just redoing prints. Also a lot of things wear and tear after a while, so making sure everything looks pristine and getting new acetone sheets and updating your prints and, making sure all of that looks picture perfect at all times. And then just did a shoot for a jewelry line that's coming out the end of April, and been doing some fashion editorial stuff for some startup brands. So yeah, it's been cool. It's been a good year so far, and I just really want to start out 2016 with a fresh, template of just new work, new things I've been doing over 2014, 2015. Just got a film load back from the past 6 months. So I'm kind of working on that now to sort of piece together a third volume of Free Association.
Cool, nice. So we have another question here, which I'll drop in.
Yeah.
So it is, how necessary do you think it is to have a printed portfolio versus a bunch of iPads when meeting with editors and art buyers? And I'm pretty much sure I know your answer, but take it.
Yeah. I think that nothing speaks louder than a printed portfolio. It is so important to, if you can't print it, get somebody that can print it for you, because it makes a world of difference. And I think that having a portfolio and a body of work that is printed beautifully, and whether that's bound together in a book, whether it's loose leaf prints, whether like I have the acetone or the acetate sleeves, it's so important. And this was also a big learning step for me too, when I signed with my agency and getting everything together, is that she was like, you have to find somebody and know how to print your work in the best way possible, because if you don't, it's going to look like I don't know what I'm doing. Because a lot of my pictures were either grainy or overexposed or underexposed or whatever it may be. They weren't technically perfect, which is to me what made the picture great. But you have to understand when printing that, how that's going to translate. So I picked up my 5 most difficult pictures that I thought to print, and had, 10 different printing houses, independent printers, print each of those test strips, and then we laid them all out on a big table, and we're like, what ones look the best? And it's incredible to see just the tiniest detail of how that changes from printer to printer, and kind of how you're going to find the one that works for you and for your style. And that's also, once you are committed with a printer, you are in it for the long run, because then you have to, if you add a new picture and then it doesn't fit, then you have to reprint everything. So I've established a really great relationship with my printer in terms of keeping everything updated, the kind of borders that we use, the layers that we use, and how all that stuff. So if you can't do it yourself, then find somebody that can, because it makes a big difference. It's always great to, I don't necessarily have 20 something printed, but I will have that on an iPad or something to show, to say, oh, this is also like what I'm working on, but that's always in conjunction with something that's printed. So it's a pain, because the portfolio is huge and it weighs like 20 some pounds, but you got to carry that thing with you everywhere, because when you whip that out in front of art buyers or, whomever you're meeting with, they want something to touch and feel and make a connection with. Anybody can swipe, and, we're just so ingrained in that today, but it really makes a difference.
Yeah, for sure. And so speaking about that juxtaposition between print and digital, let's talk a little social media. Obviously, you're in this, 20 something age-ishness. So what, how's it, have you gotten jobs from your Instagram posts or Facebook or Twitter, or I guess, how does that work for you, and how do you try to blend it into your current business?
So I think that we actually had an interesting conversation about this with my agent recently, because she is now that it's becoming such a thing, is that people want to see all sides of you. So I think it's important, I'm pretty much an open book in terms, I'm very comfortable sharing all of my things I do on a daily basis on my Instagram. But yeah, so I think it's important to just show, there's also a lot of other things that I do too, aside from photography as well. like music being a big part of that. So that's important to see those two things kind of live together. So it's cool, like if I'm DJing somewhere or posting something like that.
And you're a DJ?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's like important to like a side of me as well. So that also is where like social media definitely comes in a lot of handy too.
That's cool. But so pretty much you love social media, you do it. And
yeah, I mean, it's just like it is what it is. Like if, you know, I'm DJing somewhere, I'll say like, oh, this is what I'm doing, or you know, if I updated my blog, say this is, you know, just did a film update, or, you know, this is a picture I took for Paper Magazine, or, you know, I think it's important, and I'm also really proud of it too. So I want to share it, and I want, you know, people to see it and like it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love that you're kind of, you know, just immersed in the creativity. So, you know, you're your own art gallery person, you're, you know, music, you're like, fuck it, I'm gonna make my own Zine. You're just, I think that's kind of a lesson for, you know, how artists need to approach things today. You know, really just, you know, dipping your hands in whatever you can get into to spread your brand. So I guess kind of talk about that, like what makes you want to go, I want to be a DJ, I want to do this, like, you know, how does that work for you?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think that ultimately comes from the fact of connecting with people on a very basic level. And I think that there's something about, you know, what allows me to have successful shoots is because that is so rooted in the music that I play on set. You know, I tailor every single thing specifically to that person that I'm shooting, or whether it's a campaign, or how many hours it's going to be, what kind of, you know, like when the lunch break's going to be, you know, all of that stuff it seems very kind of OCD, but it's all extremely important to the energy that's present and how you're going to capture that. So I think that, you know, DJing in a club for 5 hours, you see every single emotion, human emotion, of complete sobriety to complete intoxication and everything that happens in between that. So I think that having that awareness and understanding how people are communicating and what makes them feel comfortable is extremely important. And I think that it could be the smallest little thing on set that makes somebody feel uncomfortable, that it again ultimately becomes my issue, because that's going to affect the picture. So if it's the stylist that's putting them in clothes that don't fit, or shoes they can't stand in, or, you know, they're wearing a lipstick color that they don't like, you know what I mean? All of those things completely influence the way that the model interacts with me. And then that ultimately affects the way that the picture looks. So it's just kind of having that awareness that you see that you're like, oh, got to change that. Can't do that. Let's try this over. But then also doing it in the most diplomatic way possible is extremely important too. So just kind of understanding all of those facets of what makes this picture happen.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important, what you kind of touched upon there about, like, you know, how photography is really just, it's all about people. When it is about people, of course, or emotion. And I think that a lot of photography that we'll get is, I think a lot of photographers don't think about that people part and like making people feel really comfortable. And it seems like whether it be you or Mary Ellen or Annie, it seems like you guys try to really understand who you're shooting, what are their motivations, whether it be Annie with her research pack she's like, this person's blood type is AB negative, so the lady like this, you know, or, you know, yourself, make sure the music's right and talking with them and getting a vibe. It just seems like that people part is very crucial so that you can get what you need to create the vision.
And there's a lot of times where I'm the DJ on like big budget shoots, which is always really interesting too, to just like provide the soundtrack for shoots is also really fun too. And it's like just a different way that I can see the side of the production as well. So, and that also just like goes to show, I think, how important that is.
That's cool. So you just said, okay, what was the last big shoot you DJ'd? I just think this is entertaining.
I did a shoot for the NFL.
Wow. Okay.
Was it was a Verizon campaign,
Oh.
and it was I can't even honestly remember who the photographer was, but a friend of mine was producing it, and so she knows that I DJ as well. So she was like, "We have some money in the budget for this." So that was also like an extremely difficult job because it was like a 3-day shoot. And it's also one thing, like if you're the photographer, there's so much fun stuff that you get to do in a single day. But as just like a DJ standing there playing the music for like a 10-hour day gets really, really intense. And like each person, I had to research every single football player before and figure out if they were like really religious or if they were like really into rap music or, so I had to make a set for every specific football player. So they would be like, oh, so, like the amount of research and production that goes into that shoot as well is, seeing the, like decks that you get for that. It's like that thick of what football players coming in and, how long you get with them and, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes they had music requests in advance. So stuff like that is like really, really detail oriented, where that's very different if it's,
Yeah, it really just seems like it's really all about, not all about, but the big part of it is people, and then there's just research, knowing, understanding. Yeah. It just seems like it's a very huge thing. It's not just showing up and taking a photo, but doing all that pre-production work. Not just getting, some people just go, oh, I'm going to collage it up and it goes like this. But no, you guys are like detailing, Google, Skyping, and just really, I think that's so incredible and interesting.
Yeah, and it's also like all of the information is so readily available now that that's so cool. And it's, specific if there's, like when I shot Alan Cumming, I read like every single thing I could about him to figure out what kind of music he liked. And it was just like him and I in a hotel room. And he's like, oh my gosh, I love this, Clash song and blah, blah, blah. So stuff like that, like once you guys have something to connect and relate on, and I've just found that music is the easiest way for me to connect to somebody like that. It really sets you up and them up to feel comfort, to feel trust, to feel all of those things that make a good picture.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, this has been so awesome. I think this has been absolutely amazing. I think kind of some of the takeaways is definitely Annie is a research Nazi in a good way.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah.
And Mary Ellen's, that point about if you don't know what to shoot everything. I think that's like hugely incredible. Those are some quotes there. So it's like research, shoot everything. Those are the two big takeaways.
Right.
Thank you so much for chatting with us. This has been awesome. We'll have to get in down the road to see what other new projects you have going on. Thanks so much. So everybody out there, this video will be available to view right after this is over, so you can just play back and you can check all the questions that we answered because I made sure to highlight them in the video feed. So this has been another edition of Shoot the Shit with Diggy Lloyd, the awesome photographer. Definitely check out her work at her website, which is just diggylloyd.com, correct?
Yep.
And then social media, is it at Diggy Lloyd?
Yep, Diggy Lloyd, yep.
The branding, she has her handles right, people.
Yeah. All the same.
Yeah, all the same. That's important.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, and good luck with your future shoots, and we'll have to check it again.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.